All right, I want to bring my old buddy Eric Sammons. I said old buddy. We're not old buddies. We're just old, me and you. Well, actually, I'm older than you. So Eric and I met at the People's Convention in Detroit, and we hung out, and we talked Trump, and we talked the Catholic Church, and he's been on the program. So is his wife, Susan, at least twice, and he is the editor of Crisis Magazine, and still 1 Peter 5, right?
Yeah, I'm Tim Flanders is the editor of 1 Peter 5, but I oversee that as well.
Okay. And Eric you're in Ohio, man, right? You're in Ohio.
That's right. I'm Ohio.
An Ohio father of, is it 8 now?
7, but 1 grandchild now.
Okay, let me start my camera. I just realized that I wasn't on camera. Okay, there we go. And I immediately thought of Eric when Pope Francis died the other day, and I'm going to give Eric the window here. I immediately thought of Eric when Pope Francis died the other day, because I wanted to see what you were going to say about it, and you pretty much said what I thought that you would say, but many of our listeners haven't heard it. And I just want, before you and I talked, I just wanted to touch on something that my friend, and he's been on the show a couple of times, John Daniel Davidson wrote at thefederalist.com, which is, it's this, and you may have seen it. The Papal Conclave is a battle for Western civilization. I tell the audience this all the time, like, you people that are Protestants that like to, call us the whore of Babylon and what have you, God love you. And I love all of our listeners, regardless of your denomination. I pray for you all to become Catholics, and some of you have. But regardless of what you think, you want a very powerful and orthodox doctrinaire Catholic Church, because the other religions follow. So there's an old saying, Eric, as the Catholic Church goes, so goes the world. And I think we're at a real crisis, pivotal moment, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about all this.
Yeah, one of the things I didn't write in my article that I published when the Pope passed away, I had it in there originally, but I had to cut out for space, was a comparison of him with John Paul II. When John Paul II became Pope, there was 2 great evils that were facing the globe, the world. One was, of course, the threat of communism in the East that was overtaking, the godless communism that was overtaking the East and much of the world. The other, though, was in the West, and that was that culture of death. And Pope John Paul II fought against both of those. He fought very successfully against the communism. Of course, it's crept back up now in the West. Not as successfully against the culture of death, but at least he was that leading voice against it. When Francis was Pope, I saw 2 great global problems, evils, which is globalism on the one hand, and on the other hand was the woke ideology that was overtaking the West in many ways. And if we're being honest with ourselves, and we're not just trying to make ourselves feel better, Pope Francis failed on both those counts of fighting against those things. He cozied up to the globalist. He cozied up to the woke ideology. Yes, he said some things at times that were good, solid against transgenderism or homosexual marriage, whatever the case may be. But in his actions, in his official acts, in so many different ways, he allowed them to kind of run rampant, and he didn't stand up to them. So what you were just saying is so true. Getting a pope who is the who can stand up to the great evils of the world today, that is what we need. And that will take a very orthodox pope, because only an orthodox and holy pope will see the evils of globalism, will see the evils of the progressive woke ideology, and speak very clearly and without confusion against it.
Now, the follow-up question to that, Eric, obviously is this. Are there cardinals out there that fit this, other than, of course, we all know about Cardinal Sarah, but are there other cardinals out there that, some people have short lists, and these are the top 10 contenders. Nobody can really know who the top 10 are. But outside of Cardinal Sarah, who's on your short list? And then I have a real tough question for you. So
well, he's obviously one of the top choices. Obviously, Cardinal Burke would be amazing. I don't think either of those 2 guys are getting elected, but either of them would be amazing. I have some positive feelings about Cardinal Erdo of Hungary. He seems to have some very solid, background, and I have reasons to believe he could be very solid. Cardinal Ranjith of Sri Lanka, He seems very solid. He seems like a solid in the model of Pope Benedict. The wild card, I think, is Cardinal Pizzaballa. Everybody's talking about him, and I think he could get elected. I don't think it's likely, but I mean, I think he could be a compromise candidate, so to speak. We don't know a lot about him, so I don't want to act like I know he's like super solid in every single way. However, he has shown incredible courage in the face of what's going on in the Middle East. He's the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, for those who aren't familiar with him. He's Italian, but he's the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem. And he's done a phenomenal job defending the Middle Eastern Christians. And he's been willing to speak out against Israel. And that alone tells me he's got courage. It also tells me there's a good chance he'll never get elected, because I don't think Israel allowed him to. But the point is that that's somebody at least has the courage to stand up to evil, even when everybody else is going along with it. So those are some names that I kind of think of. I think the likelihood of any of them that I mentioned getting elected are small, but the Holy Spirit works in mysterious ways. It's always possible that it could happen. And so those are the names that kind of come to mind at first.
So maybe we're at a moment like we were at in 1898 when Leo the 13th died, who had Giuseppe Sarto on their bingo card,
right.
on their conclave card. But then again, you had Emperor Karl or Otto or Franz Joseph, the veto, the lefty that they were going to try and put in there. And then they went, well, who are we going to get? And they said, well, this Giuseppe Sarto guy, he's never said anything. He's just quiet. So yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. And of course, it turns out to be St. Pope Pius X. So maybe we're at a moment like that.
I think it's very possible. I do think this conclave will be very divided. I know that 80% of the cardinal electors were picked by Francis. So people kind of think they all think the same. But Francis was eclectic in how he picked cardinals. He picked ideologues that are aligned with him in the West. So for example, the American cardinals, most of the Western European cardinals, those are definite Francis people. And so that's a problem. But then he also loved to pick what he called the peripheries, cardinals from Sri Lanka, like I said, from Iraq, from Pakistan. Those people are not concerned with the pelvic issues that we're obsessed with in the West. They're not caring about women deacons or same-sex marriage. They're caring about the faith surviving and being promulgated in a very antagonistical environment, which is what we're in the West. We just don't realize it because we've kind of laid over for it. So I do think that there's a good chance that we could get a pope that is not a Francis clone and is there's nothing about him yet that would show that he's that he'd be a great pope, but he could be a Pius X type where he comes out of nowhere. And that's what I'm hoping for, of course. Obviously, it could happen that just one of the standard Francis clones just gets elected. But I'm hopeful that we'll get somebody that'll at least be a wild card and that the Holy Spirit can work with to really raise up as a great saintly pope.
And maybe, folks, Eric Sammons, the editor of Crisis Magazine, on the Dude Maker's StreamYard hotline here with me here on a Thursday on the Mike Church Show. I was just thinking of this as you were talking. He didn't get elected pope, but Pope John Paul II did make then Cardinal Ratzinger the head of the Congregation for Doctrine or Doctrine of the Faith, right? The CDF.
Yeah.
And he played an extraordinarily important role there. So maybe even if you get a mediocre pope, somehow you get a Cardinal Sarah or Cardinal Burke, somebody that's Orthodox at the CDF. I mean, the damage that Francis did through the CDF, and you know this better than I do, with so many orders that were almost just put out of existence. And a lot of this was done through that entity in that office. Maybe you could catch our listeners up a little bit on that.
Yeah, I think realistically, I think the best we can hope for, and almost what we want, is a pope who will leave us alone. What I mean by that is we'll leave the traditional Catholics, the conservative Orthodox Catholics alone. Let us just do our thing, because it's been shown that we will flourish. We will grow. Our parishes will grow. We'll get more converts. We'll get more vocations. We'll have more babies. All those things will happen. And so in the long game, then we end up, I think we end up winning out. We end up getting a pope that's one of our own. Like, I don't think we're going to get a pope one of our own, like a Bishop Schneider, obviously, isn't going to become pope this time. But I do think given time, if you leave us alone, we end up taking over the church, frankly. So if we get a pope who's maybe not ideologically great or something like that, but he does things like he picks people for, like you said, this now the diaspora of the doctrine of the faith, that is at least allows us, doesn't try to come after Orthodox Catholics, right, traditional Catholics, then I think that can really be a benefit to the church. Because again, if we're just left alone, that's enough, because we're the ones who are growing. We're the ones who have all the dynamism, all the energy in the church today is with the young, not you and me young, but the actual young conservative and Orthodox traditional Catholics.
And I was just say, and I want to pass this story on to Eric Sammons, the editor of Crisis Magazine. Maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't. There's a demographic shift that's happening here in the United States. And we talk about this every day here on the Mike Church Show. I need to get you to start listening to this program, Mr. Sammons, here, make you a regular. I think that you and I agree on a lot. I think you'll enjoy the program. I've been talking about this, about how President Trump is quite possibly the most Catholic president ever. He certainly is more Catholic than Biden, than regime leader Biden ever was. We don't know about John Fitzgerald Kennedy because he was cut short. I think that JFK and Jackie were at least publicly good Catholics. They were photographed going to Mass together and holy days of obligation and all that. But I think there's been a sea change here, and I think there are a lot of young people that are attracted, especially young men, that are attracted to President Trump, and they kind of want to, it's like the old TV commercial, if only I could be like Mike, they want to be like Trump. And there's a lot to take away from that that's good. Not everything. There's a lot to take away from that that's good. And here's what I wanted to share with you. Catholics turn on the Democrats. There has been a demographic shift of 11 percentage points in 2025 alone of adults saying that they used to be Democrats and that they have fled, that are Catholics, that have fled the Democrat Party in droves. So there's a demographic shift that's happening here in the U.S. You know this and I know this because you go to a Latin Mass. You see those young families in there. And as I was saying earlier, I got a letter from a gentleman who told me that he and his wife just came into the church this past Easter Vigil after 10 years and in the Francis pontificate. So a lot of people think that we're lost and that everything is bad. I don't see everything as bad. I see there's a strong movement inside the church of the faithful. And as you said, we just need a pope that will, if he won't help us, just don't try and squash us.
Right, exactly. I wrote an article about 7 years ago for Crisis, before I was even the editor of Crisis. That's the most, I think it's like the second most popular article ever written at Crisis. And it was called No Church for Young Men. And it was decrying the fact that so many parishes, so much of church life is antithetical to young masculine men. So men who are just getting out of college, starting up their lives, getting married, starting to have kids. We've done everything we can to kick them out. And it was so popular. It wasn't like some greatly written article. It's just because it struck a chord. So many people were like, yes, yes, yes. Well, I almost feel like I should write a part 2 to that now, 6 or 7 years later, however long it is, because what's happening is there is now an outlet for young men in the Catholic Church, and you're seeing it mostly in the traditional Latin Mass parishes and some, unicorn Novus Ordo parishes as well, where young men are not. The whole parish experience isn't effeminatized so that they're run out with their felt banners and all that stuff. And so I really think, and Trump, of course, he encapsulates that because he is also very masculine, he's very attractive as a man to men. It's like, yes, this is somebody I want to be like him. Not in every way. We all know that. But the point is, in general, the way he acts, and also J.D. Vance is another example of this in a different way. He's very attractive to men to be like, yes, that's a real man there who will stand up for himself. He won't apologize for every single thing under the earth. And so I think that is a great sign in both politics and in the church. And the fact is the demographics of the Catholic Church, at least in America, are changing. It's the boomer women, the Karens are dying out or leaving, and the young men are joining. And remember, when the young men join, they bring their wives, they bring their kids. The Karens, they didn't bring anybody. But the young, strong men, they bring their wives, they bring their kids, they bring their friends, they bring a lot of people. And so, like I said, if we just kind of don't try to squash us, then that will grow. And like I said, I say within 20, maybe 30 years, we actually have a pope who is somebody we wouldn't conceive of now as being pope, who would be very traditional, very, very much in the line of a Pius X.
And he said, Karen, to you and me, folks, that's Susan from the parish council. So it's
Yes.
pretty much the same. Karen, Susan from the parish council. Okay, I don't want to keep you because you're a very busy man. You got 8 children, you got a wife, you got a grandbaby, and you got 2 magazines to run. Final question, Mike Church, Eric Sammons. If you could pick one name from the papal registry, who would you pick? I'm torn between Gregory Leo the 14th and Gregory the 17th. So I think we need a lion, but maybe we just need a really strong Gregory. If you could pick the name, who would you pick?
Oh, I think I picked Gregory. I've thought about this because I love Gregory the Great, and I think Gregory the Great is a great model for popes today. I've actually started a book on this. It's kind of been set aside for a while, but I think Gregory would be a great papal name because it would really harken back to Gregory the Great, who became pope when Rome was decimated. I mean, people don't realize how bad off Rome and the former Roman Empire, Italy, was in the 6th century when he became pope. And he is what started the Middle Ages. We literally had the Middle Ages because of Gregory the Great, because he's the one who started the whole process. He evangelized. He's the one who sent the apostles to England. If it wasn't for Gregory the Great, we'd have no modern Europe. I mean, we wouldn't have no Europe, Christian Europe at all. And so I think Europe is in ashes again, in a different way, but it's in ashes again, just like it was in Gregory's time. We need a Gregory, in my opinion. So that's the name I'm hoping for.
Isn't it amazing, folks, how the Holy Ghost works here? Because I didn't prep him for that. I didn't have any conversation about it, and I actually prayed upon it. And I'm like, okay, Mother Mary, who do you? If you had a choice, who would you wish to govern your son's church? And I kept hearing in my mind, or during the rosary or whatever, I kept hearing Gregory, Leo. The reason I said Leo is because Leo's obviously a lion, and you may need somebody to put the proverbial bull in the china shop. And as I told the listeners the other day, I'm like, it's hard to imagine, because we didn't have modern communications, it's hard to imagine the world in which Leo, who people said, Chris Farrar told me he thought he was a liberal. Many people thought he was very liberal. But Leo was thrust, Pope Paschetti.
I can't remember.
No, it wasn't Paschetti. Was thrust into the papacy at a time when Karl Marx's evil was blossoming. The bloom was blooming and flourishing across the world, and the Masons were rising, and he rose to the challenge with all those magnificent encyclicals that we all still love to read and to quote, Rerum Novarum and so many others. So an extraordinary time in which we live here, folks. Prayer is so important, and I'm going to give Eric Sammons the final word, then I'm going to let him go. Eric, final word on our conversation today. What would you encourage the faithful to do, maybe?
Yes, very much pray for the conclave, for the cardinals. Pray for the next pope. You can pray for him already because God knows who it's going to be, so you can already pray for him, and he will apply it to that man. Also, I would just say this: whoever is elected, even if it's somebody that you think is a disaster out the bat, pray for him. Give him a chance. Don't immediately just be like, okay, this guy's a lost cause. Even if it's one of the names that we are kind of dreading, let's be honest, as a Francis II. Even if the guy picks the name Francis II, give him some space. Give him a chance. Let the graces of the papal office fall down upon him, and wait until before we just jump to conclusions that he's going to be terrible.
Yeah. So don't throw your papal jump to conclusions, Matt, down on the floor. In other words. All right. Read Christus Magazine every day, and you can read Eric Sammons many, many times. He's a great editor, and a great guy. You can follow him on Twitter at Eric Sammons. And Eric, as always, buddy, so good to see you. Let's not like it be so long next time.
I know. Anytime, Mike. I love being on your show. It is great.
I thank you very much. God bless you, brother.
God bless you.
Okay, could you just hang on a second until that recording says it's done so I can make us a really nice video? Okay. Folks, we got about 20 seconds left to go here, and we're going to take a time out. We'll come back, and then we'll get to digital media files and all of the rest of what we have to get to here today.